How to get your characters to steal your readers' hearts. What is characterization? How do we reveal the personality of a character in an interesting way so that our reader is engaged and wants to know more? There are two primary types of characterization. Direct characterization. You specifically tell the reader what they should think about a character. He was a miserable human being, for example, or she was wonderful. It's easy because you're giving the adjective to the reader, but it doesn't really give the reader a lot to do. And it doesn't necessarily convince the reader. Why should they believe the narrator? The second way is indirect characterization. You reveal the personality of your main characters through a variety of more interesting and tricky techniques. Direct characterization does have its place, but today we're going to focus on indirect characterization, as it is challenging and will push you to be a more brilliant writer. I'm guessing you've heard the acronym STEAL before in English classes. Even if not, that's okay because we're going to go over it. However, if you did hear it, you probably were thinking about it as a reader when you're analyzing a story. We're going to think about it today as a writer when you use it to create indirect characterization. STEAL stands for speech, thoughts, effect on others, actions, and looks. Let's take a closer look at each one. Meet Eli. I could throw a few adjectives at you and be done with it, or I could use indirect characterization to paint a picture. Let's walk through the acronym STEAL and look at examples that show you exactly what each method is. S stands for speech. What a character says really tells us who they are, and not just actually the words, but the way they say things. Do they use short sentences, lots of exclamation points, slang, more formal language? Speech is such an important way to differentiate between characters. So if we met Eli and this was the first thing we heard him say, what would we think about him? It's really nice to meet you. I was hoping I'd make friends in the city, and here you are. Maybe we should grab lunch first, or tell me your favorite food. Then we can grab lunch. No, wait. First, we should trade numbers in case we get lost. Do you have a phone? I lose my phone all the time, but then I find it, so I guess you can't call it lost, can you? Wait, did you tell me? You got a phone, or what's your favorite food? Or hey, maybe we should grab lunch first. Clearly, Eli is friendly and excited, and just by reading this dialogue, we get to know him pretty well. Thoughts are as important as speech, sometimes even more important, because they can reveal something secret that a character wouldn't want to say out loud. I hope I make new friends, he thought, putting on his shades and looking down the long road. I'm sure I will. Everyone looks nice here, and you know what they say about strangers. They're just friends you haven't met. Internal dialogue is really important to reveal a character's personality. A character's effect on others is one of my favorite of the STEAL method because it incorporates other characters too. Your main character doesn't even need to say anything necessarily, but how do others react when they meet him or her? The crowd of kids hushed when Eli walked in. At first, no one would talk to him because they had all known each other for years and he was new. But he grinned from ear to ear and stretched out his hand as if it were a bouquet of flowers. One by one, each of them started to grin too. We not only get a sense of who Eli is, but we also get a little bit of a sense of who the group of students he's encountering are. Effect on others can kind of do double duty that way. A character's actions matter a lot. When your character completes an action, they're also demonstrating who they are. Of course, not all actions contribute to characterization. When your character walks in and eats a sandwich, that may not be the most telling fact about him or her. However, especially the actions that affect other people, paired with the last characterization method, really count. He practically skipped as he walked. Eli's shoulders bounced, and from time to time he'd snap his fingers as if the crowded sound of the city street was music. He tried to walk the same as everyone around him, but found himself speeding up, anxious to arrive at Pendleton Middle School. Hopefully this contributes to the other methods of characterization in painting Eli as someone excited about his new situation. Again, we could probably cover all this information with one sentence. Eli was excited about going to his new school. but that certainly isn't very interesting, and it might not encourage a reader to keep going. Looks is an interesting one because you can actually play with it. Sometimes the look of a character does not need to pair with their inner personality. However, you also need to be careful when describing looks to avoid stereotypes, because we certainly don't want people judging someone based solely on how they look. He wore sunglasses even when it was sunny that reflected others' images right back at them. Even though he brushed his hair thoroughly in the morning, it managed to work its way wild in the breeze after a few minutes out on the street. Even his clothes wiggled with excitement when he stood still. Think about that last sentence. Again, I could say Eli is excited, but isn't it better? Even his clothes wiggled with excitement when he stood still. It paints a better picture for your reader, and ultimately, that's what we're doing, because in a book, we have to paint a picture in the reader's mind. The more specific we get, the more the reader can dig in and build a really great picture of your main character. Hopefully going through these was either a great reminder if you've seen the STEAL acronym before, or maybe it was the first time that you encountered it, and that's fine too. But I hope you get the idea. Now it's your turn. Practice, but here's the catch. I'd like you to do it with yourself. Write a short scene about yourself where you are the main character. Try to use all 5 elements of STEAL. The scene doesn't need to be filled with drama, but it doesn't have to be realistic either. You are not limited to being set in Carlisle. If you'd like, you could transform yourself into a ninja or an explorer in the jungles. Doesn't matter. But again, I'd like the character to be who you are, and I'd like you to use STEAL. What would you say? What would you think? How do you affect others? What are your actions? What are your looks? Now, if writing about yourself feels really uncomfortable and you'd rather write about someone else, that's okay. The world won't end. But again, I'd like you to pick a character at least that maybe you've written about before, someone that you already have an understanding of, so that you're not creating something totally new, but instead you're just trying to apply STEAL to that character. As always, please go ahead and submit to Schoology below when you're done. And this is an informal writing, so don't worry too much about revision. Really focus on incorporating STEAL.